Hello and welcome to this course called Game Theory, a Primer. In a series of videos, we are going to understand about game theory. We start with a question as to what is a game? And a simple answer to that question is that game is any pastime or any kind of diversion from our day-to-day routine. Now, this definition itself is very abstract and it covers a lot of terrain. Let us try to organize it somewhat. We can start by identifying different varieties of games. First, there are games played on board, which we popularly know as board games. These include chess, checkers, Chinese checkers, and Monopoly. Chess and Chinese checkers have exactly two players, whereas Monopoly can have anywhere from 2 to 8 players. In chess and checkers, the outcome of the game is win, lose, or draw. Either one player wins and the other loses, or both players draw. In Monopoly, the player with the most assets at the end of the game is the winner. All the rest are losers. Then there are games played with cards. These include solitaire, poker, and blackjack. Solitaire is special since it has only one player. Poker and blackjack can have 2 to 7 players. There are games played on a video screen against a computer, popularly known as video games. These games are rather like solitaire in that they have only one human player. Computers can play many games. Finally, there are games played on a field or a court. These include baseball, football, basketball, hockey, cricket. Field games are played by two aggregate players, two opposite teams, which are composed of individuals, which are the members of each team. All these things are called games. So according to Aristotle's theory of categories, they must have some feature in common that brings them all under the same name. Let's try and understand what these features or set of features might be. First, all games have rules. The rules specify what a player can and cannot do. A player who breaks the rules is penalized, and according to the rules and in extreme cases can be removed from the game altogether. Second, in every game, strategy matters. There are good and bad strategies, and players can be and are criticized for choosing bad strategies. One of the tasks of game theory is to tell the difference between good and bad strategies. Third, there is always an outcome to the game. For example, one player wins and the other loses. And fourth, this outcome depends on the strategies chosen by each of the players, a phenomena we call strategic interdependence. Even a bad strategy can win if the opponent chooses a worse one. We combine these features to define a game as any rule-governed situation with a well-defined outcome characterized by strategic interdependence. Now let us look at the relationship of these features of a game to a business situation. Consider firms competing in the same line of business. There are rules governing their competition, including the law of contracts and property and government regulations, which specify what a firm can and cannot do. A firm that breaks the rules can be penalized, and in extreme cases such as bankruptcy, can even be removed from the game. The outcome of a firm's competition is typically something observable, such as the amount of money each firm makes or the amount of market share each firm has. These outcomes are often reported in a firm's financial statements. Firm strategies can include price, quantity, advertising, which markets it operates in, what kind of contracts it offers its employees, a host of things. And finally, the outcome for a given firm depends not just on what strategy it chooses, but also on what strategies its competitors choose. A firm can have the greatest product line in the world and still get clobbered by the competition if its strategies are no good. When firms compete in a market, they operate in a rule-governed situation with well-defined outcomes characterized by strategic interdependence. And we have a word for this. It's a game. In this case, it's called the market game. Business isn't the only arena in which we see games in the extended sense. They are at the very heart of economics too. Think of domestic and international economic negotiations, such as the WTO and that between the G8 countries. The international economic negotiations among the G8 countries involving international trade and finance. Economic negotiations such as these have all the makings of a game. There are rules, which is domestic and international law, governing what each party to the negotiations can do. Strategy matters. If you are absent from the negotiations, you should not be surprised if your interests are not represented. There is a clearly defined outcome, the status quo if negotiations break down, some sort of agreement if negotiations are brought to a successful conclusion, and finally, the outcome of negotiations depend not only on what your side does, but on what the other side does too. Various forms of bargaining, negotiation, arbitration, all games with at least an element of cooperation.